For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. For the start of the 1973 NFL season, the NFL introduced a new rule that would change the way that football was seen on television forever. I shouldn't say that they introduced a new rule, so much as it was Congress stepping in and forcing the NFL to change the rules. But regardless, in 1973, everything would change. You see, before 1973, it was impossible to watch your home team play while they were at home. In a move done to incentivize attendance and to incentivize people to show up, the NFL had it so that you could not watch your team play on television if they were playing at home. You wanted to watch the Cowboys play on TV and you lived in Dallas? Well, if the Cowboys were at home, tough luck. The only way to watch the game was by buying a ticket. And if the game happened to be sold out, well, that's too darn bad. At least you've got the radio. However, in 1973, the NFL changed the rules so that there were two ways that you could finally, for the first time, watch your team on TV if they played at home. The first was through an organic sellout. This is when fans buy all the tickets to the game. In other words, if the game is sold out, you'd be able to watch on TV. The second was through a company buying the remaining tickets. Sometimes, companies would do this for good PR, and TV stations would do this because they knew the ratings for the local team on TV would offset the cost of whatever it took to buy up the remaining tickets. You can learn more about one of those incidents involving the Minnesota Vikings in 1974 by clicking the card in the upper right corner. In other words, the rules changed completely around this time, and for the better. And if you want to learn more about NFL history and some bizarre rule changes and some incidents that came from them, well, this is the place for you. Because we talk about all things NFL history all the time on this channel with a new video every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on this channel. We are so close to hitting 60,000 subscribers, so your support in helping us get there would be greatly appreciated. However, as it turns out, there was a secret third way to be able to get the game on local television. Turns out, you didn't have to have a sellout, either through fans buying the tickets or through a company buying the remaining tickets, to have the game shown on television. Because this team right here that you've been watching completely stink up the joint is the 1974 Kansas City Chiefs. And one of their games got televised despite the fact that it was not a sellout. Because as it turns out, someone screwed up completely badly, and you could actually get a game to air on TV when it was not supposed to by just having some higher up mess up at the worst possible time. Because this is the story behind the CBS broadcasting error of 1974, and the time that a Chiefs game got shown by complete accident. Before I talk about what exactly transpired and just how bad it was, we need some context to understand what was supposed to happen in the first place and why the original events were supposed to happen. And as you can probably tell based on the highlights, or should I say, lowlights that you've been watching this entire time, it has to do with the ineptitude of the Kansas City Chiefs. Hank Stram was one of the greatest coaches in professional football history. But after back-to-back seasons missing the playoffs, by 1974, his magic was starting to wear off, and the Chiefs did not look great at the halfway point of the year. Through the first 7 weeks of the season, Kansas City was just 3-4, having dropped 3 of their last 4 games following a 2-1 start. And even though you might be saying, well, 3-4 isn't so bad, it gets worse when 2 things are taken into account. Number 1, the 3 wins came against the New York Jets, the Houston Oilers, and the San Diego Chargers. Combined, those teams had a record of 4-17, so a winning percentage of 19%. They were beating up on the Sisters of the Poor, and anyone who even so much as had a pulse, they were losing to. And number 2, the Chiefs were already 3 games back of the Oakland Raiders at 6-1 for the AFC West lead, and they were 3 games back of the New England Patriots at 6-1 for the wild card, at a time when only 4 teams in each conference made the playoffs. Kansas City's season was basically over before it even started. And because of that, and because of the weather getting colder as the season went on, well, you can imagine that not a lot of people had interest in spending money to attend the team's Week 8 matchup against the New York Giants at Arrowhead Stadium. A late 3 o'clock Central Time game where you're not home until well past sundown, and you waste your entire Sunday because of it? Cold temperatures because the sun is down? A bad football team going up against another bad football team at 1-6? Yeah, fan interest in this game right here was very, very low. And considering Arrowhead Stadium's massive capacity, as the venue held around 75,000 spectators at a time when this was extremely uncommon, it's no surprise that the Chiefs-Giants game did not sell out and ended up getting blacked out. You can see all the games that sold out prior to the NFL's deadline that week, and you can clearly see that Chiefs-Giants is not one of them. About half the games sold out, and half the games didn't, and the Chiefs were on the wrong half of the story. For the record, the game would end up drawing 61,437 fans, which meant that more than 10,000 seats went unsold, and meant that this was the smallest attendance for the Chiefs at home thus far in 1974. So what does this mean? Well, it means two things. Number one, it means that nobody in Kansas City, or in a 75-mile radius of Kansas City, would be able to watch this game on television. Think of any major neighboring cities to Kansas City or anywhere nearby, like Lawrence, Topeka, or Overland Park, just to name a few. They would not be able to watch the game. However, because the NFL mandates that there must be 6 continuous hours of football coverage each Sunday across the networks, it meant that another game would have to be shown in that late 3 o'clock window. Which meant that, number 2, people in Kansas City who weren't at the Chiefs game and wanted to watch football would be subjected to this game right here, an out-of-market battle between the Atlanta Falcons and the Miami Dolphins, also taking place at 3 o'clock. Cross-flexing did not exist back then, so every game where an NFC team was on the road had to be shown on CBS, no matter what. So if you're wondering why CBS chose Falcons-Dolphins instead of any other game, it's because there were only 2 games that CBS could have shown in the 4 o'clock window: Falcons-Dolphins and Chiefs-Giants. And because Chiefs-Giants couldn't be shown because of the blackout rule, Falcons-Dolphins won by process of elimination, even though the Falcons entered at 2-5 and as double-digit underdogs. And as such, there was next to nothing appealing about this game on paper. Oddly enough, I've talked about this game before in a previous video of mine, as this game right here was such a disaster that head coach Norm Van Brocklin threatened to fight reporters after the game, challenging them to a duel, and then he proceeded to get fired right after the game ended. So if you want to learn more about this game and Norm Van Brocklin's last stand as a head coach, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Having said that, this game was ugly with a capital U. The Falcons never led at any point. They lost it by a final score of 42-7. The Dolphins had nearly double the yardage that the Falcons had, winning that battle 355-196. Don Nottingham, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, had 3 touchdowns for the Dolphins, finding the end zone at will. And Atlanta's starting quarterback Bob Lee went 8 for 15 with 34 net passing yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 36.8, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. So yeah, this game was bad. But if you were near Kansas City on this day in 1974, and you wanted to watch some late football, this was the game that you were subjected to on CBS, because you could not watch your hometown Chiefs since the game did not sell out and was blacked out everywhere in a 75-mile radius. And so, if you were in Topeka when 3 o'clock rolled around and you tuned into CBS, you expected to see, according to your TV guide and according to NFL rules, the warm Orange Bowl down in Miami and the Falcons taking on the Dolphins in what was going to be an absolute bloodbath. However, you did not get that. For some bizarre reason, you did not get that game. Instead, you got, well, this. That's right. you got your hometown Chiefs taking on the New York Giants, even though the game was blacked out. Topeka is a bit of a hike from Kansas City, being 63 miles away, but it is still comfortably in that 75-mile blackout radius, which meant that it should not have been possible to get this game. Yet, if you were in Topeka, you got this game. Now, there was good and bad news from being able to watch this game right here. The good news was that it was a way better game than what you were originally scheduled to get, as Topeka was originally scheduled to get that aforementioned Falcons-Dolphins game, which, let's call it for what it is. A high school football team playing a college team would be a better, more competitive, and more exciting game than that. It was that bad. The bad news was that you watch your local team lose and fall to 3-5, losing to the hapless Giants by a final score of 33-27, losing on the final play of the game by coming up 1 yard short, and basically ending your season right then and there in a back-and-forth battle that turned out to be one of the best games of the 1974 season. And I don't think anyone was too upset that they got to watch their local team play, even if the result didn't go their way. This isn't like the TV guide made an error and people were in reliance on it and people were fuming. In terms of the majority, I think it's fair to say that most people in Topeka wanted to watch the Chiefs, and there were more Chiefs fans than Falcons or Dolphins fans combined. So showing the game that you were originally supposed to show before it got blacked out didn't exactly tick off people. But it raises the obvious question. How did this happen? How the heck did Topeka get a blacked out game when it was not supposed to get it? Well, as it turned out, it was shockingly easy to do this. Someone at CBS, quite simply, flipped the wrong switch, and instead of the Dolphins-Falcons game going to Topeka like originally scheduled, the Chiefs-Giants game went there. You would think it wouldn't be that easy, and that one guy could circumvent very strict blackout rules that the NFL enforced with military-like discipline. But that's exactly what happened. Some guy just flipped the wrong switch and accidentally sent the Chiefs-Giants game to a place where it was not supposed to go to, violating NFL rules in the process. And that raises another question. Why couldn't the game get switched off once someone realized the mistake? Once CBS realized, oh crap, that wasn't supposed to happen, we sent the wrong game over, why didn't they go back to Falcons-Dolphins? Well, that's because of another NFL rule that said that unless a game was 3 possessions or more in the second half, a game could not be flipped once it started. You can't cut away from one game in the middle of it to go to some other game unless the game is uncompetitive. And seeing as this Giants-Chiefs game was competitive the entire time and was never a 3-possession contest and always looked to be in some sort of doubt, and seeing as Falcons-Dolphins was a brutal game that was uncompetitive from the start, CBS had a paradox on their hands where, no matter what they did, they'd be in violation of some rule. So in terms of which rule to break, whether it was sticking with the game or flipping to the game that didn't violate the blackout policy, considering the fact that the ratings would be higher if they stayed on the Chiefs because it was a local team with more interest, and it was a significantly better game, considering the controversy surrounding the Heidi game just a few years before in 1968, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, and considering the fact that Topeka was in the 75-mile radius, but not so far inside the radius where it's practically bordering Arrowhead Stadium, CBS decided to stick with the Giants-Chiefs game and their original mistake. And what's really bizarre about the incident that happened in the game between these two teams behind me right here is that CBS was not punished by the NFL for this. The NFL just decided to let this one go. The NFL basically said, all right, you guys screwed up. We're going to let it slide. Unless there was some punishment behind closed doors that we didn't know about at the time and still don't know about more than half a century later. Maybe things would be different if the Chiefs complained about this. Maybe things would be different if Chiefs-Giants was a dud of a game or Falcons-Dolphins was this incredible game. But considering the fact that they picked the right game, all things considered, even if they broke the rules to do so, the NFL let it slide. Granted, the Chiefs' attendance over the final 3 games of the season was lower than the Chiefs-Giants game. Every single game drew lower. So maybe the Chiefs had a point if they wanted to claim that because of this mistake, people would be in reliance on the games being on TV locally because they would expect CBS to screw up, but that's causation, correlation, all that jazz. I'm not sure they have that much of a case on that one. Still, the NFL, CBS, pretty good terms even despite this massive screw-up. So as it turns out, back in 1974, there were 3 ways to have a game shown on television in your local market. Option 1 was to sell it out through fan support. Option 2 was to sell it out through a company buying up the remaining tickets. And then there was option 3, which was to just hope that the network in charge completely screwed up and flipped the wrong switch and ended up showing the wrong game. Because during that contest in 1974 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants, that has largely been lost throughout NFL history, that's exactly what happened. Because in 1974, not only was the Chiefs' offense asleep at the wheel, and not only was the Chiefs' defense asleep at the wheel, but apparently, so was the man at CBS who was in charge of flipping the right switch. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.